all your skill.
Pokemon is an undeniable obsession with children across the country.
Parents should not let their kids watch Pokemon, play Pokemon, buy Pokemon cards.
Just how long will this fad last? Retailers hope well into the holiday shopping season.
Pokemon busted through the cultural gates. Back in my day, back when I was about 8, how old am I now? 30? 22 years ago? So around 22 years ago, I remember Pokemon completely taking over the world by storm. Like, I used to go to Spanish school, right? And everyone was playing this Pokemon Blue and Red. I had Blue, of course. I was all about the Blastoise. And I was very intrigued. I was like, what is this new phenomena? Catching all these little weird creatures, which they transport into this little ball, and then you throw them, and then they battle other weird creatures in little balls. It was a very, very strange world. And I wanted in. And so I begged my mom to get me Pokemon Blue for Christmas on my original Game Boy. I don't know if you guys remember the old school brick Game Boy, but it was freaking amazing. It was pioneering. It really was. And even though it started with the Pokemon games, Blue, Red, and then came Silver and Gold, which I got them both, I think the TV show was almost as popular, if I remember correctly. I haven't seen it since. I have no idea. You guys will have to tell me. Outside of the game and the show, the most popular products of Pokemon were Pokemon cards. And of course, now when you hear Pokemon cards, especially the first generation, like Charizard and Pikachu, they're worth a freaking fortune. And no one would have guessed in a million years that these children trading cards would be worth so much money. But yet, here we are. The world's a weird place. Now, this is a story of how I got so obsessed with Pokemon cards, and I fell into that greed sin that I unfortunately used to steal Pokemon cards. The whole Pokemon universe hijacked my little brain, and I'm just like, I must catch them all. And so what I used to do before Pokemon cards used to be perceived as such valuable items is that when you go to the shops, they used to put the Pokemon cards just there, just on top of the counter, where all the sales associate has to do is turn around for one quick second, and you can just... Now, I haven't seen Pokemon cards sitting on top of a counter like that in decades. I've always seen it behind a glass cabinet, which is a lot more secure. So I guess I wasn't the only one who used to be naughty and steal these things. And I remember going to these shops, and the guy would turn around, and I would like take a packet or 2 or 5, and then my parents would drive me home. And on the car, I was so desperate for this, so obsessed, that I couldn't even wait home to open these Pokemon cards. I would be like opening it in my pocket, like just looking for the holograms, of course. I never actually played the game. I just wanted to collect all those shiny, rare holograms. I remember I got a Mewtwo once from these little packets, and I was like, yes! And my mum bought most of my Pokemon cards, but I definitely stole a fair few. To the point where even at school, my friends would bring their Pokemon cards. Then I'd see that shiny card, and Satan would whisper into my ear, like,
Just take it. Come on, you appreciate it more. Don't you want to catch them all?
and I'll be like, yeah, screw that guy. Yeah, I'll take it for myself. And so sometimes I would take 1 or 2, which, by the way, I'm not promoting stealing. This is going to be the whole moral of the story. Stealing is bad. Whew, aren't I wise? One of my first starter decks, I had Blastoise. I'd never had a Charizard until one day when I went to Spanish school, an acquaintance of mine, and he brought his Charizard to school. And I'm like, dude, I know I shouldn't do this, but I must. And so once we went on break, I went to the classroom, went inside his pencil case or wherever he kept it, took the Charizard, and I put it down my pants, I think in my underwear or something. Just, I don't know, like when you steal and you don't want to get caught, you're not going to just put it in your pocket. It's too obvious. And then I'm walking down the hall, right? And I'm like, yes, I got it. I got away with it. And then I hear my friend behind me, hey, whose Charizard is this? And I turn around and I see him pick up the Charizard from the floor. And I'm like, no, it must have fallen through my pants. Oh. And then he gave it to the guy that I stole it off, and he was very happy. And I didn't confess until many, many years later, like, yeah, that was me. I interpret this experience as the universe or God, some sort of a higher power, almost gave me a chance. Like, are you sure you want to do this? Don't do it, mate. You're better than this. But did I listen? No. I was a stubborn, prideful bastard. Until one day, during primary school, I went inside someone's bag during recess, and I took a whole bunch of his holographic cards. And I don't know how, but one of the teachers pulled me aside, searched my bag, found the Pokemon cards, and my whole world shattered into a million pieces. I felt so shameful that I got caught. No. I actually did feel really bad. And then one day at school, I got called to the principal's office and I see my mother there. And she's got my folder of all my holographic cards. And I had 30, 40, 50 holographic first generation Pokemon cards. And then I was with the kid's mother who I stole from. And basically, as a sign of goodwill, I had to give some of my Pokemon cards to the kid. Because even though I stole some of his cards, some of them I still got away with. Like I hid them behind other cards because there was some that I just didn't want to give away. And they're like, well, mate, you're going to have to give some of your cards. And I remember crying. I was so embarrassed and I had like extreme social anxiety. So me just talking in front of two people gave me almost an anxiety attack. So imagine my mum coming to school and me getting in deep trouble with the principal and having to give my Pokemon cards. It was a mess. It was... But I deserved it. And this was the last time that I stole from friends or people. I think I still stole from shops because I kind of justify it with, yeah, but they're a rich store anyway. Like, what are they gonna care, kind of thing. I didn't know, man. I didn't know. It's funny how the mind justifies doing bad things, which deep down, like your soul and conscious knows. That's why we have guilt and shame, these kind of negative feelings, because it's like the compass in your very being that's like, dude, wrong way. You don't do that. But when your pride and your ego is super stubborn and resistant, then it tries to overcome these negative feelings by using justification, right? It rationalizes your behavior when you know there's a part of you that knows it's wrong, but your ego is like, but come on, yeah, you know, reasons A, B, C, and D. And then you're like, oh yeah, true. The story doesn't end here though, because the most crucial part of this karmic cycle happened afterwards. Because deep down, I didn't really learn my lesson. Like I felt bad, I felt guilt, I felt shame. And there was a deep part of me that knew that what I was doing was wrong, of course, obviously. You know, I wasn't a complete sociopath. I did have some empathy. My selfishness was just more powerful than my empathy. But there was still part of me that still stole when I could and if I could get away with it. And one day I remember catching a train and I had all my holographic cards, or all my best ones. There was like at least 30 of them, right? And I had, it hurts now just knowing how much they were worth, not so much because of how I felt at the time, even though it was one of the most traumatizing moments of my life. And I was in a train, I had my little pocket of these plastic sleeves of all my holographic Pokemon cards, and I left it on the train. And I didn't realize until I got off. I bawled my eyes out like that, screaming, no! It was so upsetting. It was honestly one of the most painful experiences of my life. For that time, of course. I've definitely explored enough of reality to know that that was hardly anything compared to what I've been through now. There's a lot more painful experiences out there than losing your Pokemon cards. But as a kid, when it's your whole world, it sucks. My mum felt bad for me, bought me a couple more starter decks and stuff. But I ended up losing all my Pokemon cards, and I don't think that would have happened if I didn't fall into that trap of scarcity. Think about it. Wouldn't it have been a much more effective method to maybe learn some business at that time? Maybe I was too young to work, but maybe start trading or start using creative ideas to either make more money or trade Pokemon cards or be a part of the community or do something where I could collect more Pokemon cards without resorting to theft. I could have used that obsessive nature within me and directed it into a much more positive and practical path. But because I went for the shortcut, it ended up costing me a lot more. And then I didn't even tell you the worst part. So I kind of collected as much as I could. I still had my folder of holographic cards. Years later, once the fad kind of dissolved and I was no longer into Pokemon. Like I stopped playing after Silver and Gold, and I didn't get back into it until X and Y, I think, or Black and White, one of them. And then I find out many years later that my mum gave them away. And I was like, Mum, why would you do something like that? But then, you know, whatever. I got over it. And then 5 to 10 more years passed. This is just a couple years ago, present time. Now I find out that these Pokemon cards are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, especially the Charizard, first generation Blastoise, Pikachu, Mewtwo. I had all these freaking cards, man. And then my mum came clean and said that she actually threw them away because she didn't think they would be worth anything. So my mum ended up throwing all my Pokemon cards away. I was like, Mom, how could you do that? She's like, oh geez, sorry, I'm not a fortune teller. And it's true, like no one would have guessed in a million years that these freaking children trading cards would have been worth so much. But such is life. And I think there is always a blessing to each one of these perceived curses. Let's say that I did keep all my Pokemon cards, especially during my rough years when I was into drugs and alcohol and escaping reality and all these kind of things. Imagine if I knew the value of Pokemon cards, let's say 10 years ago or even 7 years ago. I would have sold them all very early on for much less than what they're worth now, and I would have spent it on bullcrap. And so I'd have to believe, to make myself feel better, that it just wasn't meant to be. That I'm supposed to generate wealth in other ways. I feel like that would also be another shortcut, right? Like being a millionaire because you so happen to buy into a fad when you were a kid. You know what I mean? And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like, it would be amazing. And trust me, I'd be very happy if I somehow found all these holographic cards and then made like $1 million. Of course. Who wouldn't be? But there is always a price to everything outside of money. And I think that when it comes to shortcuts, it actually ends up taking you the long way around. It's like climbing a mountain. You see this ridge and you're like, oh, that looks like a shortcut up the mountain. And then you climb up it and then you run into thorns and cacti and stub your toe. Maybe you tumble down the mountain. Now you're injured and then you have to go the long way anyway. So really that shortcut kind of costs you a lot more time. Something that my grandma used to say was lo barato cuesta caro, which means that which is cheap ends up being more expensive. Sounds better in Spanish, but I think that this is a similar principle of like when you try to go the path of least resistance, that actually ends up costing you more energy in the long run versus just doing the hard work in the beginning. Like instead of taking steroids and going to the gym, just work out. It might take you a bit longer, but at least your muscles will be more sustainable. At least you won't pay a steeper price for your health. That goes with drugs and all this kind of stuff. Like instead of taking ADHD pills so you can focus longer, so you can cram for a test, wouldn't it be better to do, even if it's just an hour or two every day versus like 10 hours in the one day and just jamming it all in the one day? Because this is what I used to do all the time. I'll save all these assignments and exams for university till the last minute and just burn myself out until I don't want to do it anymore. It overwhelms me versus being disciplined every single day, no matter how you feel. That's the thing about emotions. If you fall into how you feel in each given day, it is a guaranteed path to hell. You got to do what you got to do no matter how you feel, whether it's sad or it's happy, whether you're excited or you're feeling apathetic. Whether you feel like it or not, you got to make your bed every day. You got to brush your teeth. You got to have a shower. You got to work out and you got to do the work, develop skills. This is a mentality that if I had when I was very young, oh my God, man, I would be on a completely different trajectory. And I don't like to think of, oh, if only I did this, then I'd be here. Because I don't like to dwell on regret because it's kind of dumb in a way. It's dumb to dwell on regret, but it's also dumb not to learn from your mistakes and things that you have regretted. That's very, very important. That way you don't make that same mistake again. So moral of the story, stealing is bad, but also don't chase shortcuts. It will just take you the long way around. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, and check out this video for more content.